Since Tucker Carlson got fired from Fox, he has risen in the alternative media to become one of the predominant voices in the manosphere, up there with Joe Rogan and Andrew Huberman. As a result, Tucker is sharing his advice for young men in a way he never did before. And in today's video, I want to analyze some of Tucker's comments to see whether they are a good or a bad influence on a young man like me. So this first clip is from his appearance on Lex Fridman. Let's take a look.
What advice would you give to young people? You got 4, you somehow made them into great human beings. What advice would you give to people in high school?
Have children immediately,
Oh, that?
including in high school. Yes, I think that's all that matters.
Have children in high school? I've got to see him explain this one.
You know, again, these aren't even cliches anymore because no one says them. But when I was a kid, people always say, on your deathbed, you never wish you spent more time at work. And I mean, everyone said that. It was like one of these things. And now I don't think Google allows you to say that. It's like, no, you're going to wish you spent more time at work. Get back to your cube. But I can't overstate from my vantage how true that is. Nothing else matters but your family. And if you have the opportunity, and a lot of people are being denied the opportunity to have children.
Well, I do agree that having a family is ultimately the most important thing in life for most people. And knowing that I will have a family of my own someday is very important to me, and it provides a great deal of motivation for me. But I don't understand why Tucker would advise to have children immediately, even before graduating high school. Women have peak fertility until their late 20s, so what's the rush? And you can't legally get married in most cases while you're in high school, yet having children before marriage actually doubles the risk that you'll get divorced. According to a 2019 study, couples who marry with a biological child they share before the marriage have twice the rate of marital dissolution as couples who don't have children when they marry. So having children too young can actually lead to the breakdown of the nuclear family, which I imagine is something Tucker would be very much against. So what I would take from his advice as a young man is to bear in mind the value and the importance of having children, but not to rush it. I think you ought to wait until you've found the right woman to do it with, and until you have a certain level of financial security, which, if you're in high school, you definitely won't have.
Get off your birth control and have children. Oh, I can't afford that. Well, yeah, you'll figure out a way to afford it once you have kids. It's like it's chicken and the egg, but it's actually not. When you have responsibility, when you have no choice, this is true of men. I'm not sure if it's true of women, but it's definitely true of men. You will not achieve until you have no choice. As I always think of men do nothing until they have to. But once they have to, they will do anything.
I think this is true of some men. I certainly know that if I had a baby on the way, I would definitely feel that extra pressure and responsibility to achieve financially. But I don't think that would necessarily be a good thing, because not having children in my 20s has enabled me to take risks that have paid off and actually put me in a much better place when it comes to finances. So if I had the responsibility of a child this whole time, I would have been much more risk averse, and I think I would have been less successful. I don't think I would have moved to the US, which basically doubled my income straight away. I don't think I would have quit my job to focus on this, which again has led to more income. So having that risk aversion because of children, I think for a young man can be a bad thing. And I'll be able to provide more for my family in the future by fulfilling my potential as a single man in my 20s.
Having spent my life among rich people, I grew up among rich people. I am a rich person. Boy, are they unhappy. Well, that's clearly not the road to happiness. You know, you don't want to be a debt slave or starve to death or anything like that, but like making $1 billion, that's not worth doing. Don't do that. Don't even try to do that. If you create something that's beautiful and worth having and you make $1 billion, okay, then you have to deal with your $1 billion, which will be the worst part of your life, trust me. But seeking money for its own sake is a dead end. What you should seek for its own sake is children.
I really like what he's saying here. Given that he is a wealthy, successful person, I think it's a powerful message to send that money is not the route to fulfillment. It provides a very productive counter-argument to someone like Andrew Tate, who tells young men that acquiring heaps and heaps of cash like he has will make them a success.
And the fact that corporate America denies, oh, freeze your eggs, have an abortion. What? You're evil. Are you kidding? Because you're taking from people the only thing that can possibly give them enduring joy. And they are successfully taking it from people.
This reminds me of a conversation I was having with my dad the other day, in which I was talking about the kind of values that I look for in a woman whom I'd want to settle down with, which would be more traditional values. I want a woman who prioritizes our family over her corporate career. And my dad said, I imagine that's quite hard to find these days, but I said, Dad, actually, no, it's not. Because women my age, they've seen their female bosses who are now 40 with no children and cats, or they're divorced, or they're an absent mother, and they've realized, actually, this is a really bad deal. I don't want this for myself. Okay, so now we're going to take a look at Tucker's advice on how to find a good woman. This clip is from Sean Ryan.
Try to marry a girl who likes her dad. I think that's important. Or who did like her dad when she was little.
Why do you think that's important? I've never heard anybody say that.
Because I've noticed it. I've noticed it a lot. And up close. I mean, I'm not guessing. Like, I could be completely wrong. This is just an observation of mine. But girls who like their dads, or who like their, everyone's disappointed by his dad or her dad in later life. Like, you learn that your dad's human, and holy shit, I can't believe he's human. I thought he was God. So that's natural. But, when you're 8, if you're deeply disappointed in your dad, especially as a girl,
yeah,
that leaves a mark.
Marrying a girl who likes her dad. That's a really interesting observation, and I'm glad Sean Ryan picked up on this. When I think about the women I've been in long-term relationships with, the 2 good ones did love their dads and did have a good relationship with him. Even though their dads were very flawed, as we all are, I think it shows that they have that capacity for unconditional love, and they value the family bond. I think it makes it harder for either a man or a woman to be well-balanced if you've had a rough upbringing, whether that's a bad relationship with your mom, your dad, or just something else that went wrong and was traumatic. I think what Tucker is getting at here is that you can use these as clues to judge whether or not you'd be a well-balanced and stable person. But at the same time, we don't get to pick our parents, and mental instability can come from all sources. So I wouldn't use this as your only barometer. Instead, you have to make an independent judgment about whether or not this is the right woman for you.
Just resolve not to get divorced. I do think that's important. I'm not a particularly virtuous person at all, actually, but I did, when I got married, I had lived through a divorce as a child. I was like, I'm not doing that. Like, period. My wife came from a stable family, and she was like, divorce? Like, what? It was not even a thing. But I resolved, like, I'm not doing that. And so that, I think, is helpful to decide, here are the boundaries, like, whatever we're doing, we're not splitting up.
I like this, and this is something that's very, very important to me, and it's partially why I'm okay waiting a little while to find the right person to be with. I am not getting divorced. My worst nightmare is my kids packing their bags every other weekend to stay with dad or to stay with mom. The idea just breaks my heart. So keeping this in mind, it does raise my standards for whom I might find to be a suitable wife. And given that divorce rates are higher among couples who marry young, it's another reason to wait for the right person. Because although you can resolve to never get divorced, that could also be a trap of your own making. What if you find out a few years down the line that the woman you thought you married is really not who she is, and then you're stuck in this commitment for the rest of your life with a person you don't even like? So being stubborn and absolutely refusing to get divorced if you realize you've made a mistake, it's not always the best idea, in my opinion. And now we're going to take a look at Tucker's advice on how to make a marriage work.
I have found the 2 practical techniques that work are long walks, because you're not facing each other. So if there's a dispute, you don't have to look into each other's eyes. It's too intense. It's like big cats can't stare at each other without eating each other. I've never had a problem in my marriage that I couldn't walk off. And then the higher level of that is the day-long in bed summit meeting for like big issues. So if you have like not a minor, but like a long-standing issue, a family problem, for example, like, what do we do about that? That's very complicated. I don't know what to do. And I think we kind of disagree, and I'm pissed at you about it. Then it sort of simmers. That's when you check into a hotel for a weekend and you get room service, you get butt naked and you sit in bed and you talk about it. Indirectly, in the way you do on a sensitive subject. You don't dive right in, but you get comfortable and you stay there until it's solved.
I love this, and I think out of all of the advice I've heard from Tucker, this is the best, and I will definitely implement these techniques in my next relationship. Tucker certainly understands the importance of good communication in a relationship and quality time, even if you have children.
It also takes some balls to face female dissatisfaction. Like, I don't care the bravest man, I don't care how many terrorist doors you've breached. Facing off against a pissed off wife is the scariest thing you'll ever do. It's scarier than jumping out of an airplane. No man wants to do it. That's why they golf. And to make yourself do that is really hard. That's called leadership, actually. That is male leadership. And it's so worth it. It's so worth it, but you never want to do it. The man's impulse is to run away.
He's right. Many men are scared of those heated, emotional moments, and they try and play the strong man by just walking away and being silent, but actually, it takes more balls to stay there, to open yourself up emotionally and figure things out with her.
The last thing I'll say is, if you want to have happy children, have a happy marriage. That is the most important thing you can do for your children. If it's a choice between going to Dylan's soccer game and taking your wife to dinner, take your wife to dinner. Your kids will benefit from that much more than anything you could do for them, any game you could go to, any bedtime story you could read to them. Focus, make your wife happy, and your children will be happy and secure. What they want is security, predictability, knowing that at the center of the family is an immovable rock called this marriage, this love between man and wife.
One thing I really aim for in my future marriage is to be an example of love and happiness to my children. Because as adults, we definitely remember the feeling of love or that lack of love that we felt in our home growing up. It's definitely more important than a particular event like a soccer game. To give your children a happy childhood is the greatest gift you can give anyone, and the foundation of a happy family is a happy marriage. So overall, I think Tucker has some good advice for young men, and as a man who's been married for over 30 years, he has 4 children, he clearly has a lot of wisdom, and I'm glad that he's sharing that with the world. However, I do think his ideas about having children really young is a little romantic and short-sighted. And after all, he and his wife didn't have their first child until he was 25. Gentlemen, I'm curious to know what you think in the comments. Whether you're a young man or you're nearer Tucker's age, do you agree with his advice? Now, if you want to meet more like-minded gentlemen, enjoy exclusive videos, and take part in our weekly cocktail hour video calls, you can join the Gent Z community using the link below. It costs less than a Netflix subscription to be part of our fantastic growing club. Gentlemen, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.